Jesse, my question for you now is, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's fire away.
So we got some news today. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame announcing next year's Shamrock Series game against Wisconsin. It'll take place Sunday, September 6th at Green Bay's Lambeau Field and will presumably open the season since it's Labor Day weekend.
It's kind of a bummer, to be honest with you. And the reason why I have to say it's a bummer is for selfish reasons. Shamrock Series Game 1, I'm not really a fan of. Putting your marquee kind of premier matchup, Shamrock Series Game 1 of the season. And the other part of this is I desperately would want to go, but since it's Labor Day weekend, I'm always spending the weekend with my in-laws. And so it is usually a non-negotiable.
That's your fault. Your problem.
No.
Yes.
No. Again, I would just much rather this game be like a month into the season. I think it gives you there's so much anticipation and buildup as is for the first game of the season, but then you introduce Shamrock Series, Wisconsin, you're playing inside Lambeau. Yeah, it adds to it, but for me, I just there's already enough going on game 1. I would like to distribute that to another game in the season, I guess.
Yeah, and Trojan Fight in here, and he says, interesting. I guess that's why Notre Dame reportedly declined moving the USC Notre Dame game to September. And let's remember that the reason that was even discussed is because USC wants out of the contract to begin with, obviously, and Notre Dame does have other obligations because it was originally supposed to be on Saturday the 5th. And remember, this game, no, I guess I should even go back beyond that. This game the Notre Dame Wisconsin game at Lambeau Field was supposed to take place in 2020, the COVID season. And
Right.
everything else, all the non-conference games, with the exception of one, I believe that year for Notre Dame, ended up getting pushed off the schedule. And it was all conference, ACC games that ended up getting played. It is kind of funny when you think about it, though, that Marcus Freeman is going to coach against Luke Fickell in this game. Notre Dame and Wisconsin, assuming Fickell is obviously still there next year. But when this game was originally supposed to take place, they were coaching together at Cincinnati. And now they're going to coach against each other more than 6 years later when it actually takes place. I kind of agree with what you're saying. I don't necessarily like having the Shamrock Series game right out of the gate, just because it's the Shamrock Series game. The season opener is going to be special no matter what. And it's kind of like you kind of look forward to that Shamrock Series game a little bit deeper into the season, because it's something special. Now you're going someplace else, but obviously you've got to do what you got to do, because every team does have its own issues with scheduling, and that's part of the deal as well. And going back to the USC aspect of this, though, and we've talked a lot about it. We spent a lot of time talking about it yesterday in rapid fire, and I mentioned this. One of the reasons that Notre Dame was able to keep those series with USC and Stanford going for so long, they were both in the same conference. And so, obviously Notre Dame wanted to end up on the West Coast every year, whether it was Los Angeles or Palo Alto. And because they were in the same conference together, USC and Stanford, you might remember when they were in the Pac-12, they always played early in the season because they essentially had a partner to make those October and November slots work, because obviously one year it was going to be USC in October, the next year it was going to be Stanford, and the same in November. So to make that work, you needed two teams in the same conference that had the same issue. So those two teams would play at the start of the season. Well, now that USC and Stanford are in two different conferences, you don't have that ability, so, and that's why the front of the season is an opening for USC, but it's not so much the same for Notre Dame. And it's not as easy. It's not just as easy as saying, well, Notre Dame just needs to play that game at the start of the season. Not so easy when you have other contracts that have already been in place, and this one specifically with Wisconsin for several years, they've been trying to make this up since 2020 because of the COVID season, and now it's actually going to happen. So it's not all about just what your team's, school's needs are. It's also about what the other team already has contractually, lined out for whatever's going on with it. So it's not simple. And again, like from USC's aspect, it is now more difficult to carry out that October, November, year to year, plus the fact that obviously once you get into late September, you're into conference play now because they don't have a conference partner to switch off with Notre Dame. I mean, an easy solution to that would be just add Michigan back to the schedule on an annual basis. Then you've got a conference partner and you could, be flipping that around. Obviously, it wouldn't work out for Thanksgiving weekend, so you'd still have to figure out a way to move some things around. But I'm just saying, that's probably what you're going to need if you're going to be able to pull this off. You're either going to but again, you've got UCLA as well. So like we've said all along, just ditch Stanford and go to UCLA, and that way you're going to Los Angeles every year.
And you're back in the same conference again, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. UCLA and USC are in the same conference together, so it's easier for them. Now that might mean they would have to move their rivalry game to the front of the year. I don't know if they would want to do that or not, but
see, it just feels like this is a one-sided kind of, and it's hard because obviously being Notre Dame fans, it just feels like Notre Dame is doing a lot of the legwork and brainstorming, and USC just being like, nope, 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 nope,
right.
Nope. And at the end of the day, again, why would they say yes? Because predominantly, what has it been? Another loss on their schedule, and they are playing a more tough conference schedule now. And so why would you feel the pressure to make it work with Notre Dame when you're already playing what you consider a tougher conference schedule?
Right. And I mean, I agree with what you're saying there, but one of the things that USC has to realize is, look, Notre Dame sucked it up for about a decade when Pete Carroll was winning national championships and Heisman trophies. Right. Like Notre Dame sucked it up and didn't ditch out on the series. Like they kept it, they kept their end of the bargain. They took their butt whoopings, from year to year, and then it bounced back around. So, no, I get this, Michael. They don't care, but they should. I get it. History, tradition means less and less all the time. But at the same time, this is still the Notre Dame USC in the Coliseum is still the biggest moneymaker that USC has every other year. That's the biggest moneymaker they have. So they should care from that aspect about finding a way to make it happen. And it's also good for TV. Like when you talk about the TV partners and everybody else, everybody wants Notre Dame in USC, whether it's NBC, Fox, whoever it happens to be. It's big for everybody. And I do wonder, like from NBC's aspect, how much that potentially diminishes, and it's why you have to go out and find a Clemson to kind of have a nice little jewel to potentially replace USC with on the schedule. Fill in the blank. ESPN included Jeremiyah Love on its list of the 25 best college football players who are not quarterbacks heading into this season. Here's a line on Love. Quote, his durability is a bit of a question, but he added weight during the offseason and likely will have an expanded role after more than tripling his receptions total from 2023, end quote. And that is blank.
That is expected, but appreciated. And the reason why I say that is, as Notre Dame fans, we would expect him to be on the top 25 best college players who are not quarterbacks, because at the end of the day, we have Heisman expectations for Jeremiyah Love, or at least a Heisman run at the end of the day, right? And so it's nice that the national media is now kind of all aboard the Jeremiyah Love train that a lot of us Notre Dame fans, I think, have started and really, noticed over the last season or so. And I'll even go further to say, like, his freshman year, that run against Tennessee State, I believe it was at home, and I even diagrammed it on this show. He made that one cut and took off for a touchdown. And I was like, man, Notre Dame hasn't had a guy like that in a long time. And then here comes his sophomore season. He has a great season. all the big runs, including the one against IU in the playoffs. And so, again, as fans, I feel like this is expected, but it's appreciated that a lot of the national media is starting to catch up a little bit. And then to kind of close it out, I feel like it's a little not lazy, but I mean, he banged up his knee last year, so obviously durability is going to be a question mark.
I mean, but I don't think it is a question mark. I mean, the guy tweaked his MCL. It's not like he had like a quad contusion or a deep thigh bruise or, like he was just like generally banged up, right?
But he also played 16 games.
Right, but it took an MCL injury to slow him down. And I don't think you can say an MCL questions his durability because that's literally something that anyone could suffer just based on how you come down, how you cut, you go awkwardly, whatever. It's not that's not because of it's not because he can't take contact, which is what this implies by saying that he's got, durability concerns, durability question, and the fact that he's bulked up, because he also bulked up from 2023 to last year. And I mean, he's maybe a little bit thicker this year based on what we saw from him during training camp. But, he came into Notre Dame. We've talked about this a ton of different times. Didn't want to put a pounding on his body in college. It was, it was something that his family wanted reassurances about before he came to Notre Dame, that Notre Dame wasn't just going to use him up and throw him out there, 25, 30 carries a game and just let him take this pounding and then have no pro future. So they have the durability to me is not an issue. It's just a fact of he sprained his MCL in the USC game before the playoffs, and that became an issue. There's nothing you can do about that. But I mean, as we saw on the run against Penn State, the physical kind of touchdown run that he had, his durability's not an issue. If he doesn't have the knee injury last year, no one's talking anything about durability. That's all it was just a simple MCL, and he's healthy once again.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to question Jeremiyah Love's toughness, you can get in the hole with him and figure out. Because if he's not jumping over you, he's running through you.
Right. Drayk Bowen made this list as well, which I thought was a little bit of a nice surprise for me, because again, we're talking about the 25 best players in the country. New Irish defensive coordinator Chris Ash had this to say to ESPN about the linebacker. This spring, I've asked each player to give me their opinion on who our top leaders are, and Drayk Bowen is a guy that comes up consistently. He's smart, he's tough, he's intelligent. He's learned a lot from Jack Kiser about leadership. It's his time to take that step and become the leader of the defense. And that, Jesse, is blank.
That is exciting. And the reason why that's exciting is because I thought Drayk Bowen had a great year last year. He took a lot of steps, but you could obviously see the room for improvement. And then you start talking about, he's got the leadership qualities. He's got the speed. He's got the toughness. He's got the ability to process the defense. And so, I do think that now it's kind of his time to step in and be the ultimate leader and captain of this defense at the end of the day. And so it's exciting to continue to hear that Drayk Bowen is progressing upward. He's not stalling at any point. Whenever you hear about Drayk Bowen, you just hear more stuff about he's got more untapped potential, essentially, at the end of the day. And so as a fan, and you saw his performance, especially in the playoffs last season and towards the end of the year where he was really kind of, I thought, grooving, it's like, well, this can get even better, right? And so that to me is really exciting at the end of the day. And there was one other thing I can't remember. Here you go, and I think it'll come back to me.
Okay. Well, again, I was a little surprised to see him on the list of the top 25 players in the country, but at the same time, the excitement that you have, I think is, is every bit deserved. And the fact that Chris Ash is talking about him as a leader, I think that speaks volumes about him as well. And it's something that I think that we've been able to see when we've been able to talk to Drayk Bowen over the last year or so. I mean, his play was there last year. He's going to be counted on even more this year. And it's sounding like we're going to be talking about Drayk Bowen with a C on his chest by the time the season rolls around. So pretty cool. Did you think of
I
what you
figured
wanted
out.
to say?
Yeah, I figured out what it was. There are some people, and I've heard this from multiple people, who have said that by the end of this season, Drayk Bowen would not be a starter on this defense. I don't know how you could read what we just read.
Somebody said that?
Yeah, like he would get passed up by KVA and others basically.
They're going to play together. It's not going to pass him up.
Right. And that's where I was just like, just nonsense. Nonsense at the end of the day.
Are these people that we know?
Yes.
We're going to have to talk after the show.
Okay.
When I hear stuff like that, yeah, like, gotta agree with that, Brian NY. Gotta agree with that. Michael said the USC versus Notre Dame rivalry is not in jeopardy. It's time for negotiations for it. And tying it to Lincoln Riley comment is just gaslighting. It's for over-exaggerating content. If that's the case, Michael, I'm here for it because it's May, and this has provided us a lot of content over the last couple of weeks, to be quite honest. And, look, if USC, if this is the game of chicken that USC is playing, as you're saying, I don't know if it's necessarily that, but, like all this talk about, the series is going to come to an end, and now USC, wants to point the blame back at Notre Dame because Notre Dame won't move the game to the front of the schedule and all that. And, like they're going to go back and forth, and that's USC's game. And then they want to play the white knight coming out of the shadows and save the day. Fine. Like, if that's what it all leads to, fine. As long as
are they
the
just
series
waiting
continues.
for their hero moment to come
Right.
back and be like, we saved the day. Look at
Right.
us.
Now, that's quite a conspiracy theory to say that that's what it is. But like I said, if that ends up happening, cool. I'm all for it because I 100% think the Notre Dame USC rivalry needs to continue. It does not need to end. There are too many rivalries ending in college sports, and we need to keep a great one like this going, especially when you're talking about Midwest, LA Flash, all that stuff, the intersectional, or as our friend Trevor Trowbridge said, the transcontinental rivalry. We need to keep it going. So, fill in the blank. Notre Dame women's basketball getting a commitment from 6'2" wing Bella Ragone, who's currently the number 25 player in the ESPN Hoop Girls 2026 rankings, is blank.
A breath of fresh air. And the reason why I'm going to say it's a breath of fresh air is because it feels like ever since the season ended, all we've heard is negative, negative, right? And so it's finally nice. I mean, because it was, the first big thing was Olivia Miles, and then it was the rest of the transfers, and then it was, well, what is Notre Dame doing in the transfer portal to replace those players? And that didn't live up to people's expectations. And then the Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles confrontation dropped on the internet. And then after that, Neil Ivey doubled down and said Hannah Hidalgo is going to be the best player in the country. And so it felt like a lot of Notre Dame women's basketball having to defend themselves, right? And a lot of, just negative. But for now, it's finally kind of that, like, we can sit back and go, they got a top recruit. It's good size. She's a wing. I'm hopeful that she can also shoot. And so you start adding all those things up and you're like, oh, this is actually pretty nice. And so that's where I'm at with this. It's just finally nice to hear a little bit of positive news finally.
Yeah, exactly. And, it comes back to the fact that Neil Ivey and her staff can still recruit high school players, like elite high school players. This is another great player. 6'2". When I look at her, some of her film, she's left-handed, but it reminds me, just like watching her game, seeing her frame, she's like a left-hand version of Sonia Citron is what it reminds me of, just watching that. Sonia was obviously a wing as well. And she's averaged obviously just finished her junior season. She's averaged over 20 points a game all 3 years. So she's an obvious scorer. She averaged a double-double last year, as a wing, and just again, another great one. So it's good to see them back on track in the high school ranks, because obviously, that's where Neil Ivey has made her hay. And to your point, like they really needed a win. And this is like she comes from an athletic background as well. Her dad played quarterback at Louisville and was a backup quarterback in the NFL for a while. He's the quarterback's coach for the Rams right now. He was the Falcons offensive coordinator for 3 years. Her mom also played basketball at Louisville, so very athletic background, and you can tell it by watching her. So this is a really big pickup for Niele Ivey. And just like you said, with everything that's gone wrong, it seems like, since the end of Notre Dame's season, this is a really big kind of shining bright spot. She put it on her TikTok. So Notre Dame baseball lost 5-4 in 10 innings to Boston College in the first round of the ACC tournament. Scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate their NCAA chances after falling to the tournament's number 14 seed?
So I'm a never say never guy, but I'm going to put this at a 1 out of 10. And losing 3 out of 4 games to Boston College this season is going to ultimately decide their NCAA fate. Both regular season, and you got hot. You won all those games. You came in at the 11 seed for what? To lose round 1 to the 14 seed Boston College? I mean, it's just pitiful. And again, if you win that, if you just flip it and probably win 3 out of 4, including last night's game against Boston College, you're probably one of the first teams in right now instead of the first teams out. But Boston College is a bad team. They're a bad program. And Notre Dame lost 3 or 4 games to them this season. I really think that's going to be the ultimate. We talked about picking up games against Wake Forest and Clemson and all that, but losing series to bad teams and then also doubling down and getting eliminated by them in the first round of the ACC tournament, it's just, how do you wipe that taste from people's mouth of, should we let Notre Dame in? Oh, they just lost to Boston College. Probably not.
And that's the problem, because I think like Kentucky got knocked off in the first round of the SEC tournament, and there are going to be others getting knocked off. The problem is there are far better teams who are already ahead of Notre Dame on the bubble who have gotten knocked off, and you can't lose these kind of games. Like losing 3 of 4 games to a team that's 3 spots worse than you in the conference standings in the first round. I put this at a 2. I don't give them much of a shot. Unfortunately, you finished in 11th place in the conference going in. I realize that they were hot, but a lot of those wins, let's be quite honest, came against teams that are nowhere near the NCAA tournament bubble. Give them credit. They got series wins against Louisville and Miami. That's great. But the rest of those wins were not against good teams. And last night's loss was not against a good team. And you lost in 10 innings to them. Like they really needed to win at least 2, if not 3 games. And that's completely out the window now. So I think it's going to be a real long shot for them to get into the tournament when the selections come out on Monday. A South Carolina writer, Jesse, wrote in the last few days that the Gamecocks made a mistake in hiring Paul Mainieri out of retirement to be their baseball coach this season. It was basically the game has passed him by kind of piece that mentioned the fact that NIL and the transfer portal weren't a thing when Mainieri last coached at LSU back in 2021. He led South Carolina to a 28-29 overall record this year. They were just 5-21 in SEC play. My question to you is 1 year enough to make a judgment on the hire?
This is a laughable question, to be honest with you. And the reason why it's laughable, let's just pull up Paul Mainieri's Wikipedia page, right? First thing we're going to look at is his career record.
The 6-7 College World Series that he went to. Yeah.
He's got 1,500 wins and 800 losses. So that's a 0.65 win percentage. He's got a College World Series championship. He's got College World Series appearances. He's got 4 SEC regular season championships, 6 SEC tournament championships, 4 Big East regular season championships, and 5 Big East tournament championships. He's been a coach of the year, a Baseball America coach of the year, SEC Coach of the Year, Big East Coach of the Year.
Okay, you don't have to run down the whole resume.
But that was it. But for a guy that has so many accomplishments and with a resume so long, you're gonna kick him out after going 500 in his first year in the SEC after taking a couple years off. I mean, I get it. You want a better record in SEC play, but things don't just turn around in a year, no matter what sport you're playing in, right?
Well,
so
look, Link Jarrett literally had the worst season in Florida State history in his first season back after taking Notre Dame to the College World Series. Jarrett goes to Florida State. They were 8 games under 500. They were 23-31. Year 2, he takes them to the College World Series, and they finish in the Final Four. What if Florida State had pulled the plug on Link Jarrett after 1 year? Even Maneri himself in his first year at LSU, they were like a couple games over 500 because he inherited a mess, just like he inherited at South Carolina. Year 2, they go to the College World Series. Year 3, they win a national championship. How can you possibly, as an observer of this program, sit back and make this kind of sweeping decision about a Hall of Fame coach after 1 year when you literally, especially like if all you've got to do is look a little bit south to Florida State and Link Jarrett and see how things worked out for him. It's ridiculous to think that you would make this kind of judgment after one season.
You just can't overhaul a program in 1 year. The part that frustrates me is it's just a slap in the face to Paul. Like, you're really going to question me, a guy with all of my accomplishments, and you're going to give me a parameter of 1 year, and you're going to hold me under the microscope. Like, we all know it. Anytime you go to a team, you're a new coach for a reason. You got to completely change culture, overhaul recruiting, the type of players that you're putting on the team. Like,
Marcus Freeman had the rare situation where you inherited a good, stable base, like very few coaches there. Like you said, you get that opportunity for a reason because things are typically not going right. So, NIL, transfer portal, those are all an issue. But to make a decision like that in 1 year, again, like the Link Jarrett thing, they fired the son of a legendary coach to bring in Link Jarrett, and then he went 8 games under 500 in year 1. Mike Martin Sr., the winningest coach in D1 history, his son, Mike Martin Jr., had the job. They fired him, who Link Jarrett was teammates with, by the way, at Florida State. And they bring in Link, and it's like, wow, what's this guy doing? He's 23-31 in his first season. Did we make the right call? Literally the worst season in Florida State history. And then all it took was 1 more year, and they're back in the College World Series. And again, that's why you've got to have some leeway, I think, because would they have liked to win more games? Sure. But they looked from afar anyway, like they were pretty competitive to whatever extent they could be, in a lot of different situations, because you're playing in the SEC, but you go out, you hit the transfer portal, and you can make a difference from 1 year to the next. That's exactly what Jarrett did at Florida State.
Yeah, and that's kind of was going to be my next point. Is he brings up the fact that the transfer portal weren't a thing when he was at LSU. Yeah, it was. It's just you couldn't transfer as frequently and as quickly. And so, in terms of wanting to turn around a program, the transfer portal is going to help Paul, because Paul is going to kick out the dead weight and bring in the guys that he knows are more of a program fit for the program that he's trying to run. So,
Brian says, does this mean Belichick gets more than 1 year?
Yes.
As well.
Also, yes, did you see the Mac Brown comments today about Bill Belichick?
I did. We'll talk about those.
Unhinged.
We'll save those for tomorrow.
Just started shooting strays for no reason.
I saw that literally right before the show was starting. I was like, "Ooh, juicy." We'll have to bring that in on tomorrow's show. So the much maligned tush push is going to stick around. NFL owners voted today to keep the tush push, and they voted down the proposal to ban the pushing of ball carriers. They got 22 yes votes, 22 yes votes, 10 no votes. They needed to have 24, so they fell 2 votes shy of getting rid of the tush push. Are you good with keeping it around?
double-edged sword question. I mean, I wouldn't have mind seeing it go away because of I hate Philadelphia and I hate Jalen Hurts and I hate having to watch that play happen against the Cowboys twice a season. But the other side of it is, as an analyst and a true, I think, football fan, got to stop it. Anyone else can do it. It's just the Eagles do it the best. And so if you're really upset, then you should master it like the Eagles and force teams to stop you. And so I don't find anything illegal about it. The only reason teams are upset is because they can't stop it and they can't replicate it the way that the Eagles do.
I agree with that. And that's kind of the way that I've been on this. I will say that this is, the reason the tush push became a thing is because for 85 years, the NFL wouldn't let you do this, just like the Bush push. You weren't allowed to push players or the ball carrier into the end zone. So that's why nobody was doing it before. And then they changed the rule. I don't know exactly why they changed the rule, but they changed it a few years ago. And that's why the Bush push or the tush push came into play. So they went forever without it. And this has only recently become a thing where they have allowed it. So from that aspect, I understand why other teams would say, we shouldn't be doing this. We didn't do it for a long time. Now we are. All that said, just like you said, I'm a fan of a rival of the Philadelphia Eagles. It's no secret. You and I are both fans of a rival of the Eagles. We don't like the Philadelphia Eagles, but the bottom line is there's no one keeping anyone else from doing the exact same thing. One, stop it if you don't like it. Two, perfect it yourself and use it yourself. Nobody else is running it the way the Philadelphia Eagles are. And I think that that's what bugs most other teams, more than anything, is they can't do it and they can't stop it.
Listen, anyone in the NFL could come up with a play that no one can stop. It's just they haven't, and the Eagles have. And so that makes it is the ultimate weapon, knowing you need 1 yard. Here we go. We're going to line up and we're going to get this 1 yard probably 10 out of 10 times. So it sucks. Don't get me wrong. And I love to make fun of it. And I love to add a lot of, what's the word? Superlatives around the word.
Superlatives?
Around the tush push. But it's just, I'm most upset because it can't be stopped and it works so effectively. So, and it's the Eagles. I think that would be my other thing is if it were the Bills, I probably wouldn't care as much, but it's the Eagles. So.
Yep. That's exactly right. All right. Well, that is going to do it for today. We will wrap it up with that. Plenty of good stuff that we got to today. Tommy says, good thing you're a math guy, Jesse.
Good thing.
Hit the like button before you leave, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.